Good morning, everyone. This is T. Dubey. And looking on the screen, you can understand what chapter we are going to begin today. So why not begin by, acting like an interviewee and interviewer. So in this case, let you be the interviewee and I be the interviewer. And I am asking you some questions to you. Try to answer them honestly and then we will move ahead into the story. Question number 1. Whenever you are going to sit for an interview, the panel of board or panel of the interviewers will ask you to introduce yourself. So you introduce yourself and I give a pause so that you can introduce yourself properly. The second question that interviewers often ask the candidates or the interview is about their strength. If the panel of the interviewers is really practical and they want to encourage you what you know, then they will ask you about your strengths and they will also ask you to talk about your weaknesses. Sometimes candidates try to become diplomatic and they try to give half-baked answers, which does not work. So when you are going to face an interview, keep it in mind that you be honest, you be frank and open to the people who are taking your interviews. And after recording of the chapters, I will be posting some videos on how you should face interview, how you should answer your questions, because I have sat on panel of interview for a very long time. So my experience will help you a lot. Now, because this is not that kind of interview which is expected to be, so let us understand the opinion, the ideas, the views about this chapter. As usual, we will be talking about the title, then about the author, then we will be talking about the central idea or the theme, then we will be discussing the interview, understanding the chapter in detail, followed by a summary, and towards the end I will be showing you the analysis of this chapter. So let us know something about this writer, Christopher Sylvester. Now look at the screen and read the first paragraph about Christopher Sylvester. So Christopher Sylvester was born in the year 1959 and is a versatile and accomplished figure in journalism and literature. If you search his image on Google, then you will find a very healthy and tall personality. I have not used images here, so you can do this research on your own, and you should do also, right? He is known for his insightful writing and keen observations. Keep this phrase in mind. So he is known for his insightful writing and keen observations. With a natural gift for storytelling and a deep curiosity about human experiences, Sylvester has made a name for himself as an author, journalist and critic. So Sylvester is a famous author, a journalist and a critic, and these he has achieved through his gift of storytelling and a deep curiosity about human experiences. I would suggest you to write such kind of phrases in your answer. If you write a phrase like a natural gift for storytelling and a deep curiosity about human experiences, your answer will stand out. Your knowledge will stand out and you will start appearing to be a serious student. So such kind of sentences should be used in reading, writing, speaking, so that you can become a little different from others, Now, What sets Sylvester apart is his ability to effortlessly handle various writing genres, whether it is fiction, non-fiction, and or journalism. So he has been handling different type of, different categories of literature, genres of literature. He has been handling fiction also, non-fictional also, journalism also. So you can say he's a multifaceted or versatile genius. His works strikes a unique balance. It blends intellectual depth and accessible prose. So this phrase is also very important. So his work strikes a unique balance, blends intellectual depth and accessible prose. So he shows intellectual depth in his writing. Moving on to the next paragraph. Throughout his career, Sylvester has demonstrated a talent for delving into diverse subjects, different types of subjects, ranging from travel and food to politics and culture. So he has been handling different types of subjects, travel topic, then food articles, then politics, then culture. So he has written on different types of subjects. Sylvester has also authored books that captivate readers with compelling narratives. Compelling narratives means interesting stories that keep you tied. When I am explaining this chapter, this is not keeping you tied because you must be feeling monotonous and boring. But once you read his stories, his narratives, you will find them compelling, that keep you tied, that keep you engaged, and meticulous research. His dedication to exploring the intricacies of human condition shines through his work. Very standard sentence. So his dedication to exploring, that means researching the intricacies of human condition, complexities of human conditions, shines through. So because he has been a writer of high intellect, so he dives into serious topics, which is not, which cannot be applied here in your case. Okay, moving ahead to the theme or central idea. So let us talk about the theme or the central idea of this chapter. In this chapter, the author, Christopher Sylvester, discusses the varying opinions and experiences surrounding interviews. This line should be memorized by you. In this chapter that we are going to discuss, Christopher Sylvester discusses varying means different, diverse, different types of opinions and experiences surrounding or about or regarding interviews. So when you open the chapter, you will find history of interview, then what different people think about interviews. For example, when I began this chapter, the discussion of this chapter, acting like an interviewer and making you as an interviewee, then so far as the interviewer is concerned, he or she asks question and the interviewee finds in two different positions. Either he loves or she loves to be interviewed or does not want to be interviewed. So there are different types of opinions, varying opinions and experiences about interview. It also shows perspectives of several notable individuals throughout history. So you are going to see some opinions about interview given by different celebrities, authors, writers. These opinions range from viewing interviews as a valuable source of truth and an art form to considering them as an unwarranted intrusion in one's life. So this highlighted part divides the opinion into two groups. Some group thinks that so far as interviews are concerned, they are a valuable source of truth and it is an art form. Remember this. Quote this line in your exam. So some people think that so far as interviews are concerned, they are a valuable source of truth, or it is an art form. But the other group of people considering them as an unwarranted intrusion in one's life. So another group of people think that an interview is an intrusion, an interference in their life. And this interference, this intrusion means interference, is unwarranted. Unwarranted means unnecessary, uncalled for, not required. So these are the two different types of opinions or varying opinions. The chapter emphasizes the power and influence held by the interviewers in today's society, as interviews serve as a crucial medium of communication, shaping our impressions of contemporary figures. Moving on to the next paragraph. The chapter shifts its focus to an interview with Umberto Eco. So this chapter is divided into two parts. The first part will be talking about history of interview and varying opinions, some people thinking it as a source of truth and an art form, and the other group of people, especially celebrities, considering it as an unwarranted intrusion in their life. Second part of this chapter will talk about an interview between Mukund Padmanabhan and Umberto Eco. So who is this Umberto Eco? Umberto Eco is a renowned scholar and novelist. Eco discusses his wide-ranging interests in philosophy and ethics with Mukund, which he explores both in his academic work and his novels. Overall, what is the chapter going to be? The central idea of this chapter revolves around the diverse perspectives on interviews and the discussion of Umberto Eco's career, his transition from academia to fiction, and the unexpected success is novel. The name of the novel is The Name of the Rose. So when Umberto Eco wrote this novel, it became one of the most successful novels of his time, and overnight, you can say, after the publication of this novel, he became a great literary figure recognized in the world, and therefore Mukund Padmanabhan interviewed him over the success of this novel, The Name of the Rose. It also underscores the value of intellectual and challenging literature in the literary landscape. So by and large, you must have understood what the central theme of the chapter is. The central theme of this chapter, the interviews, is what is the history of the interview, how interviews are viewed or how interviews are considered, and what does it serve, how important interview is in today's time. The second part of the chapter will be talking about an interview between Mukund and this Italian novelist Umberto Eco. Now let us move on to the third part of this discussion, that is the interview, understanding the story or chapter in detail. Now look at the heading, the interview, understanding the chapter in detail. And here we have history and significance of interviews. So in the next point, what is written? The passage highlights the history and significance of interviews, especially in journalism. So this is what you are going to get in your chapter. Interviews have been seen both as a positive and negative influences. I have already discussed that different people see interviews differently. Now, here I would like to suggest you something. This chapter can be handled even in 10 minutes also. if you understand the crux of the matter means the central theme, how you should work. The entire chapter is divided into 3 parts. And if any question comes based on the chapter, you can easily guess what questions are coming. I will tell you how. So because the first part of the chapter is talking about 2 groups of opinions about the interviews, positive opinions and negative perspectives. So if any question comes, it will be related to one of these points, one of these topics. So you can easily understand entire scene of the chapter. So here, some individuals view interviews as a valuable source of truth and even consider them an art form when conducted in their highest form. This must be memorized. Point number 2. I am not taking much time because I have already discussed these points. Interviews are seen as a powerful medium of communication and they offer a means for people to share their thoughts and experiences. Now, you will find Dennis Bryan's view. Dennis Bryan is quoted as saying that in contemporary times, our most vivid impressions of the contemporaries come through interviews. Contemporaries, that means people of the same time. Interviews hold significant power and interviewers, those who take interview, hold significant power and influence. Why? Because they are responsible for conveying important information to the public. So far as interviewers in today's time, when we are talking about interviewers, we are talking about journalists, great journalists who interview important people, personalities, leaders, celebrities, writers, authors, sportsperson, right? Now, but there have been contrast or conflicting opinions about interview. So negative perspectives on interviews. Perspective means opinions or views, especially from the point of views of celebrities. These celebrities are mostly authors or famous writers. The passage highlights the negative perspectives on interviews, particularly from the point of view of celebrities and some prominent figures. Who are they? One of them is V.S. Naipaul. So V.S. Naipaul believes that interviews can wound people. This is negative opinion about interview and cause them to lose a part of themselves. So V.S. Naipaul's opinion about interview is that it can wound people. How? How can it wound people? Because somebody is asking you your internal opinions, what you think, which you may not like to share. So in this way, it can wound you. Lewis Carroll, the creator of Alice in Wonderland, I had read this book Alice in Wonderland much earlier, do not remember much, but Lewis Carroll became famous because of this creation, because of this composition. Had a strong aversion means dislike, to interviews and refused to be interviewed, partly due to his horror of being lionized. What does this mean? He thought that so far as interview is concerned, they can make them greater or they can make them more famous, and people do not like, some people do not like. Rudyard Kipling condemned interview as immoral and likened them, means compare them to a crime. So Rudyard Kipling criticized interviews, calling them as immoral and compared interviews to a crime. He felt that no respectable person should ask for or give interviews, considering them cowardly and vile. Then another is Saul Bellow, despite consenting to interviews on occasion, compare them to thumbprints on his windpipe. So these phrases must be memorized by you. Very, very harsh, very, very condemnatory opinion about interviews. thumbprints on his windpipe. On the windpipe is your body organ that connects your mouth to stomach, you can say. So what does this phrase mean? It gives interviews leave deep negative impact on the interviewing, and therefore suggesting discomfort or pressure associated with being interviewed. So these are some of the negative opinions on interview given by these authors. H.G. Wells referred to the interviewing ordeal in 1894, but still participated in interviews and even interviewed Joseph Stalin. Joseph Stalin was the president of Russia. So H.G. Wells, though did not like interviews, but he himself started interviewing others. And one among them was Joseph Stalin. Now let us see this part. The passage talks about interviews in a fair way. It says that they are important for communication, but it also mentions that some people, especially famous ones, can feel uneasy about interviews and have different opinions about them. So now, so far as this story part is concerned, I have underlined all the important point. Here I have given sentence stories beginning since its invention a little over 130 years ago. So here the bold part gives you a history of interview. I have inserted so that you can have some additional knowledge about interview. So the first interview may have been conducted by James Gordon Bennett in New York for the New York Herald in 1836. However, the practice of interviews can be traced back to the 4th century BC in the Indian political treatise called Arthashastra, written by Panini. But Thomas Edison is also credited with conducting the first job interview. So Thomas Edison is credited with conducting the first job interview in the year 1921. So this is a brief history of interview. And here I have underlined this part of the story. Right, this is the positive part that I have underlined, and the highlighted parts are the opinions of the celebrities. What is the opinion of V.S. Naipaul, then Rudyard Kipling, then other celebrities I have already discussed. So here Saul Bellows I have already discussed, so there is no need for me. So you just note down all these points and you can write. This question is coming in your board exam, this question that I have given. If any long answer type question comes, chances are this question will be the one that should be asked. And this is the answer that you should keep. In this part, second part of the chapter, these are the areas, this part of this story or chapter, let us say, talks about an interview between Mukund Padmanabhan and Umberto Eco, that Italian novelist who had written The Name of the Rose and became overnight famous. So when Mukund asks Umberto Eco questions, his questions are generally related to these 5 topics. Versatility of Umberto Eco, concept of interstices, transition to writing novels, means then public perception as a novelist, success of The Name of the Rose, and factors behind the novel's success. So these are the broader areas on which Mukund asked questions to Umberto Eco. So if you keep them in mind, it will be easier for you to keep the entire chapter. And this is the answer that is highlighted. I am not going to read this entire part for you, but made it clear what you should keep in mind. The bold part must be kept in mind. These are not very much important because these are interviews, so you can read and understand. Right. Pause the video, read it properly, carefully, and pause it. And if there is another question that can be asked on this chapter, it should be this one, because there are only two parts, part 1 and part 2. In part 1, we have 3 different points to be kept in mind: history of the interviews, positive perspectives on interview, negative opinions given by the celebrities, or you can say authors, and the second part is the interview part that is conducted between Mukund and Umberto Eco. And if any question has to come, it will be coming from either of these two parts. So if anything comes, it will be this question, and this answer should also be kept in mind. Now the summary part. Let's understand summary. The chapter The Interview by Christopher Sylvester discusses the varying opinions and perspectives on the practice of conducting interviews, particularly in the context of journalism and celebrity culture. We have already discussed, therefore I do not think it is required for me to discuss minute details over here, which is already explained. It highlights interviews, it highlights how interviews have been a commonplace in journalism for over 130 years and how they are perceived differently by different groups. Already discussed. Now, chapter presents several notable figures and their views, already discussed. So, some celebrities such as Lewis Carroll, Rudyard Kipling, Saul Bellow express their disdain here means negative opinions for interviews, viewing them as intrusive and potentially diminishing their privacy or integrity. So these are the negative opinion, means celebrities who hold negative opinions about the interview. Despite the drawbacks of interviews, these interviews are recognized as a valuable medium of communication, allowing people to gain insights into the lives and thoughts of others. This is the concluding part, must be kept in mind by you. Moving on to the last part. The chapter also includes an excerpt from an interview with Umberto Eco, where he discusses his career as both a scholar and a novelist. Eco reflects on his writing style, the success of his novel, The Name of the Rose, and how he views himself primarily as a university professor who happens to write novels. Now, this is not a typical story that will need a lot of elements to analyze. A few things. So, analysis. Subject and context. The subject of this chapter is interviews in journalism, and the context is the widespread use and varying opinions about their merits and drawbacks. So this chapter is talking about merits of interview, drawbacks of interview, and the topic of the chapter is interviews. What is the tone and style of the writer? The tone is informative. The author provides information regarding interviews and somewhat reflective. Reflective means thinking. While the style is descriptive, presenting historical examples and contrasting views. Theme. What is the central idea? We have already discussed. The passage explores several themes, including the significance of interviews in modern communication, the contrasting opinions of public figures about interviews, and the power and influence of interviewers. So these are the 3 points that you need to keep in mind. Significance of interviews. What is the importance or significance of interviews in modern communication? What are the contrasting or varying or different opinions of public figures on interviews, and the power that the interviewers hold when he or she is taking interview. Second part, Umberto Eco's intellectual journey from philosophy to fiction. In the second part, Umberto Eco discusses his interest in philosophy and ethics, which shape both his academic and fiction writing. He explains how his storytelling approach in academic work influenced his transition means change, to writing novels later in life. Despite being known for his novels, Eco sees himself as a university professor and values reaching a wider audience through his fiction. He also mentions that his best-selling novel's success was due to readers seeking intellectually stimulating content rather than easy reads. Let me explain the last line. So far as Umberto Eco's novel, The Name of the Rose is concerned, it discusses serious topic, research, and our perception or general perception is that so far as a novel is concerned, it is designed to entertain people. It is designed to, cater to the interest of readers. But Umberto Eco thinks that there are people who like to read intellectual things, who would like to read even serious things, and therefore such people who like to read serious novels on serious topics have been behind the success of his novel, The Name of the Rose. So it's all about this particular chapter. Hope you must have understood it, though I do feel that it's a little, what should I say, serious, not boring. Boring is not a good word. If it has been included in your syllabus, it must have been included after due consideration and a lot of thinking. So of course there should be some chapters that give you information and try to make you serious. So it's all about the chapter, the interviews. Hope you must have understood. If you have, do not forget to subscribe and like it. And if you write some comments, it will be helpful for me to understand what problems or what merits you find in the lectures. So it's all from my side.